If you're building a startup in India, handful of angel investors, 5-6 funds, बस इतनी startup ecosystem. For us to be this big developed economy, it's going to need a lot of capital.
You saw that wealth creation very closely. What was your understanding by looking at that event?
अभी मैं बताऊंगा तो every 20-year-old listening there right now would say यार क्या बोल रहा है? You make all the money and then you say that money is not important. Businessman entrepreneurship का कीड़ा तो था ही, and now you find yourself in Silicon Valley. 2008 हुआ, everything in the valley come crash.
Financial crisis erupted.
That business was acquired by a large player called FIS. The main founder got a good exit. I didn't make much. Thankfully, life gave me the opportunity where few things fell into place. I actually disappeared.
This was all a function of the financial stability you got from the previous exit. How are you thinking about what to work on?
There's again not any single silver bullet formula. And we were 40-50 million in revenue. Giving gyan or mentoring startups was not enough. What am I really going to be able to solve for them? Can I solve for this alternative financing beyond? Yes. Investors misguiding entrepreneurs out there by saying startups should not raise debt and they should only raise equity. Are they really investors? Haven't we just very recently heard of the biggest downfalls of what we consider the biggest unicorns? Because they were overflushed. 2016 demonetization happened and we saw payments going digital. India gave UPI to the world. And the next is India is going to give to the world. Network like it's your job. Networking is the only real currency of business and business building. Never let that child inside you stop asking why. Because that is where innovation will stem from. You can't take somebody else's great idea and say, I will solve that. It's a problem you should have faced. Suddenly kuch nahi hota hai. There is a lot of blood and sweat and years and risk that goes behind it all. But even the best gamblers are the ones who know when to get up off the table.
Does investors don't ask you, yaar, aap FinTech bana rahe ho, what's your background? What was your first venture? Take me to that time. And I know, is it the same venture that you end up selling in States?
No, so we'll take a step even before the venture, right? Let's take an insight of what were some of those pivotal moments in life that defined the journey so far, right? So one of the most pivotal moments was, 17 साल की एज में ना एक academic setback हुआ. What that did though was that first unknowingly shattered a lot of the traditional path that was laid out, right? It's like I'm a Gujarati boy born in a family of businessmen and बहुत एक simple set path होता है, right? Which is कि भाई
11th कर लो, 12th कर लो,
engineering कर लो, MBA करो, come and join the business. Right? Because of this setback, एक तो ना वो पूरा disrupt हो गया. वो पूरा that whole plan, that एक charted plan था, which was probably the first time I remember that I hit rock bottom in life, right? In terms of self-doubt. I was never a great student, but I was never a bad student either, right? But I was always doing multiple things. But as I was going through that first journey of self-doubt, questioning who I am I good enough, right? Whatever time I started to learn to, and it was again unknown, right? It is through that failure that I learned to live alone with myself. My first lesson of being lonely moved from being lonely to saying, I enjoy my own company, right? It was simply that, I didn't want to face the world. After a lot of struggle and fight, saying, "Mere saath kyun hua? Why with me?" That when I let it go and I submitted myself to the universe is where this journey of the 17, 18-year-old boy starts.
17 साल की उम्र में the academic setback. What happened next?
This then, of course, led to putting myself on a fast track to leave my mark behind these things. And that's when, as I mentioned, found my way to US University, graduated, got a good on-campus job in placement, and that's where, again, let life happen to me. कोई intention नहीं था कि bank या financial services में जाने का. But Wells Fargo Bank, third largest bank in the US, if they give you an on-campus placement.
क्या करते थे उसमें आप? Exactly, what was your role?
In banking and financial services, I look at Wells Fargo as a great foundation because once you start in a very large institution like that, they start from teaching and training everything about financial services. So yes, I was onboarded as a financial advisor, handling very large HNI and wealth customers for the bank, selling ultimately a lot of different financial products, but a strong base sikha diya of all types of financial products that a bank and a financial institution offers. So that became a good foundation layer. But Wells Fargo Bank is in California. That's where I was put up. So वो एक businessman entrepreneurship का कीड़ा तो था ही, and now you find yourself in Silicon Valley. So very quickly joined a very small boutique tech shop. Again, कोई बड़ा idea नहीं था, small tech company. We started picking up projects जो बड़े IT firms नहीं करते because they are innovative. You hustle and find a way to win those projects.
ठीक है.
तो यार Google और Visa को वो time पे ना first contactless payment करना था phone पे. Visa, as a large payments company, wanted to test what we call as contactless payments or NFC payments on the Google campus.
Which year was this?
2005-06. We picked up these projects. We were doing a company US में है थी तब आज भी है called Intuit, which is like Tally of India, right? Which had the largest small businesses, and they wanted to make a digital financing app on the mobile for everybody that was using the Intuit accounting software, right? So yay projects, this is the first phase and avatar of what you now understand as FinTech, right? Which is where we took technology, mobile technologies, and we built a new layer of user interface to be able to offer these traditional payments, digital financing. 2008 hua, which was when we saw everything in the valley, everything in the US come crash. But because we had this domain and niche expertise and understanding, that business was acquired by a large player called FIS, which is the largest payment processor. 2009-10, the company, the main founder got a good exit. I didn't make much. That was the first learning of saying you can get burnt if you don't know the game either. But ठीक है, still young, that was not the aim. But I earned a lot of goodwill on the street, right? So वो करते was able to get a lot of opportunities. कि कुछ, I can do a next startup in the US. VC funds were talking to me, but और किराया नहीं, India जाके करते, right? And I really say it was more jingoism than patriotism. And came back to India 2009-10, saw that यार एक तो यहाँ startup करनी है, handful of angel investors, 5-6 funds, बस इतनी startup ecosystem होती थी 2009-10 में, right? You realize that your friends, family don't understand what you do. तुम एक तो startup कर रहे हो, उसमें भी कुछ fintech, digital payments, क्या होता है ये? But वही जुनून था, अलग करना था. Always wanted to, again, coming back to leave my mark behind, right? I always like to be a category creator where being at the upfront of something new, then part of something that is already well established and matured as an industry, right?
You were the chief growth officer, right, in the organization, and you saw the wealth creation very closely. That there are these folks. हमने कुछ काम करा, and suddenly we got $150 million in our bank account. I don't know how much of those $150 million you got, but you saw that wealth creation very closely. What was your understanding by looking at that event closely?
So सबसे पहले तो यार suddenly कुछ नहीं होता है. There is a lot of blood and sweat and years and risk that goes behind it all for this kind of event to happen. Right? So coming back to the word persistence is, even in the itsCash journey, we saw the highs and the lows from being one of the earliest fintechs, where we were probably the first check by a couple of VC funds in India ever, to then being, for a phase or a few years, completely being written off, right? कि ये तो नहीं होगा scale, कुछ नहीं है, right? To then being able to still tweak ourselves, find the right model, wait and survive for the right flow, and not get carried away in the FOMO. These are some of the learnings that, and I picked up from a few other mentors that we built itsCash with, right? To also understand that, yeah, you know, even at the exit, no matter what the amount was, some people said, oh, but you know, you were not made as much money as the company should have. The investors didn't get that big a return that they expected in terms of the big multiples, right? But we realized one thing, that we actually returned actual cash. There was no equity swap, there's no future. There's actual money returned back to investors, to all the stakeholders, and to some of us as management. Now, whether we made less or more, that's secondary. But the point was that the importance of building a real business that can survive various cycles of the highs and the lows is why itsCash survived. There were many other players in that same time, many other competitors. Nobody saw an exit. Coming back to the fact that, yes, there was some capital and wealth creation at the end of it. Was it more or less? But it was actual wealth creation. One of the other things that I learned through that, or experienced through that journey, was also there is no point in trying to keep being on a treadmill to chase something. You give yourselves a target, even in our personal lives, of certain wealth, of certain lifestyle, of certain, right? But you know, even the best gamblers are the ones who know when to get up off the table. That is where the third most important piece that I live and breathe by is life is a pursuit of balance. You know, abhi main bataunga to, you know, every 20-year-old listening there right now would say, yaar, kya bol raha hai? You know, you make all the money and then you say that money is not important, right? But truly, again, look into nature. Even a lion who's supposed to be the king of the jungle will only hunt as much as it needs to eat and fill its stomach. But human beings have become this only one species that just want to keep on accumulating instead of enjoying. Let life come to you. Let life happen to you. Is where I realized that I don't think it's the pursuit of wealth. Yes, we all need, and I think it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Achieve, right? But know how much and what is enough for you. Know your own balance. I said this a few days ago as well. It's a beautiful saying by Socrates that all things in moderation, including moderation. So to your question, yes, through what journey, saw what it takes to build a business, saw what the highs are, saw what the lows are, saw what it takes to make money for others, saw what it takes to build some amount of personal financial independence. And then I did another crazy thing.
क्या?
A lot of my peer group, and you know, there are a lot of founders, we all are the same batch, 2009, right? A lot of us, you know, have built businesses over that last decade. At the end of one story, the pursuit would be immediately jump back into the next, right? There's a success, there could be immediately a lot of backing. I actually disappeared. 2018, I finished my tenure at EbixCash, the integration, etc. And I had, thankfully, life gave me the opportunity where few things fell into place, where firstly I took off and disappeared for over a month.
क्या करा था? क्या करने गए थे?
Travel the world.
स्कूल में तभी करा था क्या?
Yeah, वो तो, there have been many different milestones. Picked up paragliding some 20 years ago, picked up skydiving then, picked up scuba diving about 10 years ago.
Where do you paraglide?
Bombay or Pune ke beech mein, there are these Sayadri mountains, right? So that's where there is a huge paragliding community. And then we've gone around the world. Bali, beer billing is one of the best sites in the world. We've gone to Nepal. Pokhara is a very beautiful flying site as well. So that's few places where you again are able to observe and see what nature has to give you as live learnings.
गायब हो गए थे आप एक महीने के लिए फिर
And then was able to literally, I say this, stepped out of all professional life and was a hands-on father. I had my firstborn in my hand. So my last professional working day was 1st of August 2018. And 4th August 2018 is when I had Eva, which literally means life. And I and my wife call it our most important startup creation.
so too
And then the opportunity life presented and something I wanted to do, which is completely disappeared off professional life and became a hands-on father. And spent the full year being that close to seeing my child and being that hands-on. And why should only all the mothers get all that joy and fun and the sleepless nights, right?
this was all a function of the financial stability you got from the previous exit.
To an extent, yes.
Okay.
You need financial stability, but I don't think that was the only reason. In fact, with the kind of capital, I should have jumped in right away and built another business. The temptation to now build, because now you don't, money is not the limitation anymore or the constraint anymore. And also your hot property. So you should, in fact, the popular notion is to jump right back in, otherwise you're forgotten by the industry.
Really?
Of course. But being able to stay away from that temptation, because again, beautiful music also happens in between the pauses. Great symphony also has its pauses. Have you ever heard music that just can keep going up in one tempo?
No, it's like sinusoidal.
And it's those pauses, and that's what life allows you, these pauses. You have to be fearless of being able to take those pauses for yourself.
Take me to the journey when you took the gap. How are you thinking about what to work on? Or फिर how did you lend it कि यार ठीक है, I'll do what you are currently doing?
There's again not any single silver bullet formula of landing at that next right idea. The simple story is that when you take a pause, you let many things happen. You dabble and experiment with many things, right? I've never shared this openly, but to tell you, through that phase and even before GetVantage, I spent a year taking up a very old standalone वो जो cinema halls होते हैं ना, single screen जो defunct हो गए हैं, यहाँ ही बॉम्बे में लोअर परेल में single screen cinema. I picked that up and spent the next 1.5 years just retrofitting it and making it new into a creative community space. It was my love for design. It was my love for creation. It was my love for building something ground up, right? And wanted to create, and it was another passion project. It was something I had to let happen. Do I have any background in interior design? Do I have any background in construction? Do I have any background in, and we failed miserably. I built it, but we failed miserably because getting permissions in India or in Bombay, in a city like Bombay, to build something creative, right? And I'll share this. It is Project Karmshala. It was a place. Karma for me is your deeds, your actions, your ideas, and a sanctuary for that, right? We wanted to build one of the first self-sustaining projects, a 5-story building which would have its completely be off-grid in the heart of the city. You see a lot of people make these off-grid projects and properties, but outside, right? I wanted to be able to prove the model that in our metro cities, in our jungles, can we create an example of a self-sustaining building with its own rainwater harvesting, its own solar farming on the rooftop, with its own green farming for its food, to its own, and it was an old theater, so its own performance and creative studio. And we built all of that with some of the best designers and with some of the best green consultants to try to make something like that. But we couldn't get permission. The project's still unfinished. It's unfinished business. So what I'm trying to say is, like that, There are multiple different things you work on. Some of them is like, it's again, you start a nursery, you plant a lot of seeds and you see which one germinates. Not all of them are going to, right? No matter how good a gardener you are, you know and you have to accept that not everything that you sow will bear tree or will bear fruit, right? So you have to but you have to keep doing it. And so, yeah, for that couple of years, just took that time. And again, I say this openly, GetVantage was not a eureka moment idea. It was not like I got up one fine day or I saw around the world saying, ye acha ho raha hai, isliye ye karte hain, right? All those ideas actually fail, by the way. If you chase something, you have to literally, what was a creative community space, okay, that we were building physically led to the understanding that if we want more ideas to come up in one creative space, or we want more creators to be creating, that means what is one common thing that was lacking was not only space, but also capital. And that's where I understood, and I went back to my own journey and understanding that even while building itsCash or building a business in India, having alternative forms of capital was the most challenging thing. Yeah, even when we were building itsCash, and I'll tell you, 2009 to 2013, we had raised Series A, Series B, Series C. We'd raised about $30-40 million, which in today's day and age could be as much as $300-400 million. Huh?
It's like a Series A for pre.
And we were 40-50 million in revenue. And even then, our bankers, as a payment business, when we wanted small working capital, एक 5 crore की working capital line चाहिए थी, our banker said, please give us a piece of land.
Collateral.
As collateral, right? And it was that pain, right? I'd suffered that pain as an operator. What did I need that capital for? I wanted to increase marketing. I wanted to be able to up the ante a little bit, right? And I just needed that booster capital. And so when that problem became a little more evident to me, it came much more closer that, what is something that I want to find purpose in is, yes, I want to help a lot of these businesses and ideas, but what does it mean? Just giving my time talking and giving gyan or mentoring startups was not enough. What am I really going to be able to solve for them? Can I solve for this alternative capital, this alternative financing beyond equity capital only? Because equity capital has become fashionable. And you have to have gone through that cycle to now not want to chase that, right? We see that media today also just announces this startup raised this round from this VC fund and that, you see. Yes, it can be a great milestone, but it's not still an achievement. You have to still build a real business. And I think we've seen that that model hasn't worked really well. Haven't we just very recently heard of the biggest downfalls of what we considered the biggest unicorns? Because they were overflushed with capital. Please understand, I'm taking you back to connecting dots to say, even giving too much of one type of capital, just pumping in equity capital without the discipline of having to return. Because we forget a lot of young founders and entrepreneurs I meet, I'm surprised sometimes that they think that yaar equity paisa utha liya na, angel se, wo to free money hai, you don't have to return. There are no free lunches in this world. In fact, that's the most expensive type of capital that you will raise because you have to give that model is expected to give the highest return. It's just that the tenure and the risk appetite is different, but even that money has to be returned. In fact, that has to be returned in much, and you're giving away a lot of stake, control, style of doing business. And there are. And it's also a little bit of the learnings and experiences that I had in the Silicon Valley itself, where VC world grew out from. Venture capital is not very old. It's just 30, 40 years, 50 years old as an industry. It's a small son of what is known as private equity. There's public markets and there was traditional private equity. And so for very new age, high risk tech companies, there was the earlier stage of private equity, which was called as venture capital. And it has just made it just made sexier and glorified by a few. Because it's only in the VC world that they call themselves investors. Are they really investors? May I ask you that?
Gamblers, bettors?
No.
Ben?
They are not investors. They are also fund managers.
They're managing someone.
They have raised money from investors and LPs and they're managing. But you look around and today every small VC fund also, And an associate at a VC fund who's running a small fund, an associate or an analyst also calls themselves an investor and decides whether अरे आपका moat क्या है, TAM क्या है. Again, I think all forms of capital is important. So I'm not going to bash any one or the other, but I'm simply just saying that that one form of capital did get over-glorified in the recent past. And hence, it takes a journey to say if you want to really build a real business, every founder should have an awareness and an understanding that there are multiple forms of capital and you need all forms of different capital for different phases of your business and journey, which is what we call the founder's financial toolkit. You don't have to, as a founder, as a future entrepreneur, as aspiring entrepreneur, you don't have to be an expert in finance, but just have the awareness that there are different forms of capital that you need. And you should be aware that take the right form of capital for that right stage of growth that you're getting into. So having raised a lot of equity money through the years, having seen the pains that as new age young companies which are asset light, the way of businesses are changing. We're not building factories or taking machinery, so we can't give collateral. So the way of alternative finance should also change, right? That married with another simple trend that I saw, which was what has happened in the last 15 years in India, right? Commerce went digital, e-commerce happened, right? Amazon, Flipkart, right? Book My Show, Make My Trip. We saw commerce going digital. 2016 demonetization happened and we saw payments going digital. So if businesses and commerce has gone digital and payments has gone digital, that means now businesses are getting their revenues digitally because consumer behavior has changed. You and me are now paying for all our products and services that much more digitally. So if commerce has gone digital, payments and revenues have gone digital, then it was time that financing also goes digital. That's marry these two things with the problem as an operator, the pain that I went through myself, marrying that with a largest trend that you see, that India is always going to be an economy of small businesses. You can call them startups, you can call them emerging brands, but it's always going to be a country of small businesses, and these businesses going to need all forms of capital. We have to be able to deliver that in a much more digital and frictionless fashion. And that's that unfair advantage that I wanted to be able to give to a lot of young founders and emerging brands. And that unfair advantage is what gave birth to GetVantage.
Interesting. As a founder, if I'm building a company, there is one, of course, equity-based funding where I can, give a part of my company and then get something, and then there are things. Then there is a traditional debt, right? What are other forms of capital that are available?
So, सबसे पहले तो let's debunk this one myth. What debt? For many years, or for life experiences, the word debt has gotten a little
Negative connotation
to it, because we start associating the word debt with वो घर भर debt पे लगा दिया, 3-5 साल debt में घुस गए. What we have to revive is being able to understand that there are only two forms of financing in this world: equity and quasi-equity. Equity is when you are raising capital and giving away some equity in your business. And quasi-equity means all different forms of structured finance where you're not giving away equity, but there is some different return. And debt is a small sub-segment of quasi-equity. The unfortunate part is we say equity and debt. No. If you see that a lot of times what really a young business needs, right? You don't need 3-5 years of long-term debt. What you really need is 3 months, 6 months of working capital. You need 3 months of increasing your inventory today so you can sell a little more when season time comes, right? Or you're a brand, you want to be able to increase your marketing, so you want to just pump in a little more in marketing today, acquire customers that will be with you for over a year. So there is short-term capital advances, there is OPEX capital that you need, which is for operating expenses. There is CAPEX capital that you need for longer-term
capital.
CAPEX
Petri.
And so then there are so many different structures of finance that are out there. There's a wonderful book. It has a full chapter on GetVantage, but more than that, to everybody who wants to learn, it's a book called Adventure Finance. And it will tell you in quasi-equity, there are so many different ways that you can structure capital, and you'll see a lot of that happening. We innovated in India with revenue-based financing, which means looking at a business's revenue trends. Can I give it a capital advance so its revenue goes from X to 2X? And its future revenues itself repays. So there is no fixed EMI. Unlike a traditional business loan that a bank gives, right? Or a traditional lender gives, right? Because you know what is more tougher for a small business? You might commonly think that once a month EMI is the best thing. But that's not how a business gets its revenues, right?
कभी आता है कभी नहीं आता. It's
In fact, the tougher is for a small business is when once a month, that one date, you have to pay salary, rent, and electricity bills, and you have to pay. सभी चीजें एक साथ जब आती है, तब cash flow problem होता है. But imagine if, as your cash flows are coming in, some of a small trickling effect of that is taking care of some of your repayments or some of the advances you've taken. That's what capital advances are. That's what short-term rotating lines are. That's what revenue-based repayment structures are. Because you are customizing and tailoring the capital the business needs based on its cash flows, rather than on a strict, you are doing a business X, which is very different from business Y, but a traditional lender will give you both a same EMI, same 3 years. It's one size fits all. That's not how businesses need capital. Some businesses need a 3-month working capital, WCDL line. Every 3 months, they get a lump sum contract money. They repay the debt along with it, want another line for 3 months. So it could be very, very different. Just like how a business has to need its capital for different things, the way digitally you can use technologies to understand the cash flows, understand these cycles, and give capital for those cycles, which is not a debt trap. Even today, a lot of founders meet me and say, we are a very early business, should we take debt? I said, you're not taking debt. You're taking an advance for your future revenues. And you're taking it in, and it's actually more important because it makes a business that much more disciplined. जब आपको मैंने अगर 100 रुपया दे दिया और बोला बनाओ, बनाते जाओ, बनाओ, मैं देते जाऊंगा, will you be more disciplined, or when you have to also keep returning a little bit? And this is where I can use this platform to openly challenge a lot of investors who are misguiding the upcoming entrepreneurs out there by saying that startups should not raise debt and they should only raise equity. I think to make that very one single common statement is a big error. I think what makes it disciplined, और आपने Reliance का example लिया, right? Let's take the Reliance example. And why only Reliance? Look at every public market company. They raise equity, then they buy back their shares as well. They buy back their equity also, right? They raise debt, they repay their debt, right? It's about being disciplined that through different cycles of your journey, what does your business need then? Right? Reliance is one of the best businesses. And if you saw, it had the largest debt because it was in a growth spurt.
and
When some businesses got a different working cycle, they've repaid that. That inculcates discipline in a business. You will see a lot of businesses in India that are, and again, don't want to generalize anything, but I want everybody listening in to make their own assessment that if I was just giving you unlimited amount of equity capital, kept telling you take equity, what happened? You diluted. This was your question, right? Why does founders end up with such limited stake in the end? Is because an investor or a VC's job is also to fund, right? So he wants to keep giving more money and keep taking more stake of your business. The better your business, the more he will tell you to take only equity. Now, yes, you need all forms of capital. When you want to experiment, build something completely new, the risk reward is very different. You need research and development capital, you will take equity money, right? But then for working capital, for inventory, for pattern where there is business in rotation, take capital advances, take cash flow based funding, grow your revenues from X to Y. जहाँ पे pattern हो गया, use your equity money for new lines of business where you want to experiment. And again, this brings to this aspect of balance. You will never hear, it's very easy to sometimes as a founder or promoter make these big statements that are very popular in nature, right? I'll use one. He's a dear friend, so I won't take his name, but, go big or go home. It's very misleading. In fact, if you see that journey itself, it was not go big or go home. Stay at it till you go big and never go home is actually that journey. Being persistent, it's misguiding when you say that there is only one path. The path is to consistently find a balance. Raise all forms of capital, grow in all forms, keep calibrating to what is your balance. That is what cycling is about as well.
Interesting. Tell me, when in a business, debt is a good option, when it is not a good option?
I will again not answer that question because I will answer it from saying capital and financing is always a good option for the business. It's the terms for which you raise that capital or financing. Because absolutely, to grow, you need fuel. That fuel is capital for every business, right? And the smarter thing is being able to understand that what types of capital, what tenures of capital, what tenure of financing and what terms of financing am I taking? And it is not only in the headline pricing, kya interest rate, kya flat fee. It is actually the devil is always in the small fine print of the cost of that financing, of the cost of that equity. It's actually not the valuation or the money you raise. It's actually the details of the SHA that you have signed in which you've given away a lot of rights to your business. That's where the cost lies. That's what the larger price is as you grow a business. Even in financing, always keep taking all sorts of financing, even if it's short tenure. And do not look at traditional lens of what is the IRR, what is the equity. Look at what your absolute cost of debt is. I tell businesses that, or founders, that why do you need to take 3 years of debt? A traditional bank will give you cheaper debt, but वो आपको 3 साल का debt देगा. Do you really need money for 3 years? You might need money only for 6 months. So absolute cost of debt is only for 6 months because you're taking it for short tenure. Why do you want to pay interest, less interest, but in percentage terms, but interest for 3 years? So nothing is of good or bad. It's you have to be able to engineer it for what you are taking that capital. I'll give you a very different positive example. Some founders raise capital from us, not for growth, not for their traditional sense of inventory or marketing. They actually raise capital and financing from us because it adds to their bottom line. You might ask how. So we have small businesses, family-run businesses that come and raise debt from us for 6 months when they're going into their manufacturing and inventory cycles. They raise it from us at X, give that as a cash advance to all their suppliers and manufacturers because they give them an X plus 2% as cash discount for not taking credit terms but paying them in advance. So उनका माल जल्दी आता है, supply उनका priority पे हो जाता है और उनको cash discount मिलता है.
Negative.
And actually they make 1 or 2% on the capital they take from us and add to their bottom line.
Crazy.
Every good large business in the world is not on the product or their idea. Even the largest fashion business or the fashion group in the world, which I'm sure you would know.
Louis Vuitton?
Correct? Is it run by fashion designers anymore? It is run by financial engineers. And so if you can build a real business with the right financial engineering, there is nothing that is right or wrong. It's just how you are utilizing it and making the best advantage of what is available out there.
When you raised for Get Advantage, did you raise equity or capital? And how was the...
Always. All our forms of capital. GetVantage has at least tried to build itself exactly the way we preach. We also had to build a tech platform, our first in world in-house API stack and tech platform. And we had to invest a lot of in it. So yes, all our rounds, we've raised hybrid capital, which is a mix of equity and debt. See, any which ways, credit or debt is my raw material, right? GetVantage has its own NBFC, Get Growth Capital. I have to continuously raise capital. That's my raw material, which I fund other businesses with. So we are always raising all forms of capital.
Well, this is through LPs.
Absolutely.
Credit funds and
So in the NBFCs, we are able to raise money from institutes like banks, larger banks, wholesale lenders who give money to NBFC. That's an RBI licensed. On the other side, a SEBI alternative investment fund in AIF Cat 2 is where you're able to take private capital from LPs, family offices, HNIs, and pool in that money in a debt structure with a debt return.
and most of the
Right? And we then use our platform to partner with all traditional banks and NBFCs as well. We are exactly like Uber is for mobility or Amazon is for e-commerce. We're a platform with our own vehicles as well as a complete supply of different forms of institutions who want to give money to these new age and small businesses. And we are providing this great tech way to evaluate them, fund them, and return capital. And this will leave you with this little bit anecdote that if you're building a startup in India or an emerging market, and especially if you're building a business that is in financial services and regulated, always have this, and I have this in front of me every day. If you notice, it's some of the things that I put in front of myself every day is innovation within the guardrails of compliance and regulation, right? That is when you build truly lasting businesses that, yes, it is important to innovate, but innovate within the law of the land, innovate within what are the parameters available to you. Stretch the boundaries with innovation, but do have those guardrails that builds a much more balanced growth and a balanced approach.
what is the closest model to, is it the Indifi of the world? You have studied Indifi. Is it trying to do something similar? No.
Uber did not invent taxis. We always had Kali Pili, then we had Cool Cabs, then we also had Meru. These were different versions, right? But some of them were still asset heavy. Some of them were not completely as digital. You needed all of that to happen for that instant mobility to take off, right? And that's what we truly believe GetVantage is built in the world of capital. We are truly not only India, but possibly the world's first capital gateway where any small business, MSME startup can come, connect to us. And on the other side, we have tons of different supply and different forms of capital for different businesses that might need the capital, right? And you might say that that's exactly, Amazon started 20 years ago by just selling books online.
Right.
Uber also, you had only one type of cab available, but today you have a plethora of all of that. That's what truly a gateway does, a platform does. GetVantage is that capital gateway, right? And yes, we have all different forms of capital in the quasi-equity structure, which means you can also get traditional bank debt, capex capital, you can get opex capital, you can get working capital lines, you can get, depending on what the business really needs, can come in one place and be able to get. So if you're going from A to B, right, you put in your ride and that ride is sent to 5 drivers in the location, right? That means if you're a small business, we will give you options with 5, 6 different players you can raise money from. So is there an immediate comparable? No. We strongly believe that every traditional player who is a lender, financer can also be on our platform as a supply partner.
Makes sense.
And every business and startup that is raising either directly from some other players should also come and connect and take an option from GetVantage itself.
I'm getting you're kind of making a platform for all of them. I mean,
And it's not very difficult. We really look at this as the next. So let me tell you, we all now know what UPI is. If I asked you this question 8 years ago, did you know?
no idea.
What UPI did is created a very seamless, interoperable play that doesn't matter which bank account to who, a transaction can happen a little bit faster or seamless. ये नहीं था कि ये पहले नहीं हो सकता था. A UPI has done is created a slightly better train track.
Layered infrastructure of interoperability. Yeah.
Yes. And what private players like a PhonePe and Google Pay have done is created a great gateway on top of it, on top of these better train tracks. So it's not too far away. Now again, keep only what you want to keep. This is not, I don't want to use your podcast as any marketing platform for GetVantage. But what I want to share with is what I am supremely proud of and gives me very, very strong passion and energy to do what we are doing is, we keep talking about the Western market or the Western world and America giving AI to the world, but India gave UPI to the world.
Yeah.
And the next is India is going to give Oaken to the world, which is Open Credit Enablement Network.
मैं अभी जो लिख रहा था ना वो यही लिख रहा था.
Which is nothing but digital public infrastructure. For any innovation to happen at any phase of a revolution of any industry, there has to be a creation of digital public infrastructure that creates just the train tracks. On top of it, private trains can run. And then we build faster private trains, from coal trains to steam trains to bullet trains. That the private industry does. But digital public infrastructure, what train track to has to be set up.
Yeah.
Does anybody own UPI? It's digital public infrastructure, and then innovation happens on top of it. And if that has already happened, not very far away in the world of financial services with the world of payments, that same thing has to happen in the world of financing. And that is what is being built as we speak in India right now, called Oaken, Open Credit Enablement Network, which allows all players and tomorrow it will become extremely ubiquitous and simpler for you to raise any form of capital from any traditional player or new age player with the right platforms and gateways that will make that completely seamless and interoperable. As GetVantage, we are the first platform on Oaken that is live with our own NBFC that is completely enabled with 10 other traditional NBFCs and lenders and financing. This is where we'll be able to democratize access to capital, because if India has to get achieve this dream of 3 to 5 to 7 trillion, right? It's going to need a lot of capital and financing and credit. For us to be this big developed economy, it's going to need a lot of capital. And to be a small part of this very momentous time that would happen. And so that's why we call this is going to be the UPI moment of
Lending.
financing.
Now, since you have told me about Oaken, what is something that I can build? Is there any gap that you feel that you are not going to solve for, and you need another player to solve, maybe 5 years or?
Again, like I mentioned, look at Oaken as just a protocol available for you to now drive innovation and find new use cases that we didn't even know existed or could be solved.
Give me an example.
So you can look at UPI in so many different ways of how today payments could get embedded within the entire ecosystem itself, right? Now think of it, that just the way you could be in a super app booking something, but your payment can be done through that same click. That's what UPI did. These are use cases that got evolved. The same way, you can now think of saying, financing and capital available at a click of a button in so many different ecosystems that are even unimaginable yet. And it could be done in so many different sectors, right? Think of it today. If I am a small business selling on any marketplace and I want to quickly increase my ability, I need, if at a click of a button, I can get capital that I can increase my inventory, I can sell more on that same platform. This is so many use cases of commerce, right? And when I say commerce, I'm not only talking about Amazon, Flipkart, Swiggy, Zomato, because every restaurant today is also selling digitally and reaching its consumers digitally. These are a lot of the common use cases. A few of them we are already solving for with embedded financing. But now when we take it into smaller areas of agriculture, right? Think of the right from the smallest thing where the farmer needs instant capital just for what? Seeds, right? He doesn't need to go to a loan shark, but if he can get capital just for seeds without any other data, but that money going immediately to the seller of seeds, there's so much of risk that is killed because it's end use specific. So being able to give money for all the inventory, the seeds, the fodder, the whatever it needs to start harvesting, then to a use case when after harvest, that farmer can now, instead of immediately selling its produce, at harvest season, you don't get the best prices, right? But can you go ahead and store that with warehouses? But if you get instant financing because you need money at that time at harvesting, but even if you get 70% of the money, you are fine. Now you can store that for the next 6 months, and when the commodities price goes up, you're able to sell it at a 30-40% better profit, and that is ability. These will be so many small use cases. All ye sab jagah pe kya chahiye? You need capital at the fingertips. Interesting. Can digitally that capital be provided instantly, right? And you are able to kill all the traditional ways of evaluating a person or a business. You don't need to look at last 3 years profitability of a business. You don't need to look at what the balance sheet of the last 3 years said. What you need to know is what is its current revenues, and can I have collections control? What Oaken also does with the technology stacks and we are able to build on top is I'm able to now be able to give businesses capital and make sure that there is collections control, that I get repaid as a financier from its future revenues. So I have killed all the risk of non-repayment, fraud, the cost, the OPEX. Now we can reach the length and breadth of this country for so many different small use cases. कहीं पे भी कोई भी buyer या seller है और उन दोनों के बीच में
कोई भी transaction
हो रहा है, अगर वहां हम financing switch on कर सकते हैं. Now I don't think I know all the answers. This is the opportunity that is in front of us. और अगर आप ये digitally deliver कर सकते हो to the length and breadth of this country without the traditional branch, feet on street sales people जो financing करते हैं, if you can digitize this reach, that's when truly financing can reach, credit can reach every corner of this country at a fraction of the cost.
This is very, very interesting, but the example that you gave was on the consumer finance aspect, right?
No, these are all business. These are all businesses. आप एक गराज चलाते हो, आपको क्या चाहिए पैसा? आपको स्पेयर पार्ट्स के लिए एडवांस में पैसा चाहिए. So take any small business and just understand that there are so many working capital and financing requirements that they have. And why we are really highlighting that, in fact, the future is increase business financing, not consumption financing.
Why do you say that?
You want to go to a store and buy the latest mobile phone or the latest TV. This is not your need, it's your want.
Right.
Right? What have I made easy? By giving you credit or a personal loan and saying that you pay me in 3 installments, 4 installments. What have I done? I have allowed you to buy more than what you can afford today, but your income has not increased. But now think of a very small handicraft manufacturer in West Bengal or a weaver, right? He needs money to buy wood today to make better chairs or better fabric. उसको आप 3 महीने का पैसा दो, वो आपका अपना रॉ मटेरियल खरीदेगा, ज्यादा चेयर्स बनाएगा, अपना बिजनेस बढ़ाएगा. So and that means that you're giving money where there is going to be, by giving him capital, is going to increase his production and his sales, which means he'll create jobs, and that means actual real money will go back in the economy than just giving free money into your hand as a consumer today. That's a bottom-up approach. And hence, Oaken drives towards saying, can we give sachet loans to that small MSME, that karigar, that trader, that small manufacturer, so that he can increase his production, that he can increase his business. And that will drive a growth in upliftment in the economy. Because वो तो ज़्यादा chair बनाएगा, ज़्यादा बेचेगा.
It's very, very insightful. एक बात और बताओ. Let's say if somebody is excited to solve this problem, right? What are some on things on the compliance side that he needs to solve? वो it's not easy कि मैं आज equity raise करा, मैंने पैसा बनाया, लोगों को लोन देना शुरू कर दिया. I need to have a structure, a fund, an NBFC. Can you tell me the process? Can you?
Yes, if you want to build something that allows a massive amount of institutional growth, there are different paths you can take. Not everybody has to take the path. There is Oaken.dev, there is blog.getvantage, which has so many of these use cases. And please just share these links because all we are sharing is so many different ideas and use cases. And I want each one to go out, and if you're really passionate about solving for this, go and see the way we've created the architecture, which makes it, we are dismantling and creating different specific tasks in the value chain. Pehle na, you had to be a full NBFC to do the whole thing,
Right,
of financing. And hence you had, but now what you're able to do is become, if you understand a use case, if you understand that there are certain types of merchants and small businesses who are potential borrowers, you become a tech platform that becomes a borrower agent.
Oaken allows that.
And as a borrower agent, all you have to do is come and connect into a loan agent, a player like us or others, who then has certain regulations, compliance it's taking care of for the borrower agent. And below the loan agent are the regulated entities, which are the NBFCs and the suppliers and the true lenders. You can play a role of purely being a borrower agent. You can play the role of being a data aggregator. You can be a collections tool, digital collections. These are all different parts of, in fact, in financing, the entire life cycle of a financing journey is far more complex, and that means there are far more opportunities, from underwriting to data mining to collections. There are far more different, more specific use cases that a new startup can play, connect into this ecosystem without having to go into being able to have to go and take all the regulations and licenses, and solve for specific use cases or that specific item in the whole value chain that they want to solve for.
So the system is trying to debundle all this, right?
Of course.
But the real money lies in, so once a tech platform will want to become a loan agent also, lending agent also.
So the point is, first is, if you can debundle the journey, and if there is enough monies to be made across the entire value system for specific items, then you don't need to. It brings down the OPEX for everyone, and that is what the tech has to be able to enable in it. And I think I can only give parallel examples from other industries that have just taken off by this interoperable nature, right? So once again, go look at how this can be debundled, because in the world of financing, unlike payments, it's far more complex, because in payments, I had to transfer money to you. I had to pay you. Transaction done. मैंने आपको भेज दिया, पैसा done. In financing, it's the reverse. When I actually give you money, the transaction starts, because now there is a whole cycle of repayment and collection. So that means, yes, it's more complex, it's more challenging, but therein it lies more opportunities. But the simple debundling and interoperability only makes the pie bigger and the opportunity bigger for everyone, contrary to people believing that that means this will become an open market and everybody will kill. Let me give you the counter example of FASTags. It was not very far ago that we all were frustrated कि हर टोल नाके पे हमको पैसा निकालना पड़ता है. Why could it not be one? Today it's become one across the country. Doesn't matter who built the road, who is the contractor maintaining that road, who is the guy who's running the toll plaza and who's collecting the toll. FASTag is something that is accepted everywhere. But do you know there are so many startups with different use cases built on top of FASTag?
Give me example.
You can take by just acquiring customers by offering FASTag, you can create a complete parking solution. Because now, even giving parking in different publicly available parking lots is done through FASTag, right? People are using this to create. We've funded a business called Highway Delight, which with FASTags, it has created a complete travel journey. So if you want to travel the country, this startup and an app acquires you through FASTag, giving you recharge, etc., then shows you different spots you can fill petrol or charge your car. But actually, the business is to give you a complete travel journey where if from Bombay to Goa, if you want to go by road, can you take those inside roads now? Or can you take the more beautiful, scenic, longer roads and create a road trip? And so it's become a travel app built on top of FASTag and built on top of the different charging spots or petrol pumps that are available, and has created a complete roadmap for road travel experience. So these are just few small examples that you can build it on top of.
You're building in fintech space, right? No background of finance, no background of technology. And if someone like you wants to disrupt a new world, right? What are some 1, 2, 3 things that you will suggest him? Does investors don't ask you, yaar, aap fintech bana rahe ho, what's your background? And how do you solve that? Do you bring in experts, or when things happen like कि आप technology में कुछ platform बना रहे हो, आपका जो tech leader है, मतलब जो भी है, again you bring in experts so that वो आपको बेवकूफ नहीं बना पाए. Give me some understanding of that aspect also.
So I think first and foremost, you asked me 3 things. So let's break it up. The first one, I think we've spoken about it a little bit, and I will re-emphasize that innovation stems from curiosity. Just be curious. Never let that child inside you stop asking why and can it be done differently, right? Don't let that curious child in you go away, because that is where innovation will stem from. And so you don't need to be academically from that domain or that. If curiosity and the piece to asking why, you are actually at an advantage, because you will have a more different way of looking at it than how it has been looked at traditionally. The second is you have to really passionately understand or have lived that problem that you want to solve, because it's going to be a very tough journey with a lot of ups and downs. You have to be so deeply passionate about that problem you're solving. It's a problem you should have faced or suffered, because unless you've literally not lived it and want to really have the keen madness, junoon to solve it differently, it'll become very difficult. So you can't fake it. You can't take somebody else's great idea and say, I will solve that for that great idea. So no matter what industry, right, you have to have owned the problem and live it passionately to want to solve it. Because it's going to be a lot of rejections that will tell you can't do it. And third and final, most important out of all of them is network. The only thing that I can tell you that I did not have the academic background or the academic knowledge to do is network like it's your job. Network the daylights out of, because that networking is the only real currency of business and business building. I don't think I would have been able to achieve so many things, break into new industries and new sectors, if I didn't use every opportunity to build a relation, build a network, And I think that makes problems आने वाले हैं. Sales करना है. But you have to be able to be completely shameless and be able to network. Do you know, just 2 weeks ago, I was able to, and the team kept telling me that, I have a small cupboard in the storage room here in the office, and that was filling up, and I had to go in and check and see what I should discard, etc. I still today found one full bundle of close to, I would really like to say 10 to 15,000 cards, business cards from 20 years ago as well. जब मैं वो छोटा business development करता था और exhibitions में जाता था, it's Las Vegas, Singapore, doing that, finding those tech companies, from those till now, and all still nicely, my Rolodex had nicely labeled where I've met these bunch of people, which year, when. And I have thrown a lot of old stuff that got accumulated, but I still keep all those business cards. I probably don't use it, but I really strongly feel that is what I collected, that even today, 15 years ago, someone who met me in UK, in London, will write me an email and say, we are doing this new initiative in India. Can you be involved? Because you're the first person we want to remember when we're doing a startup boot camp for FinTech in India. And that's where I met my co-founder, my CTO and the better half of GetVantage, Amit Srivastav. We've never worked together in our past lives. He's been a veteran FinTech guy as well. I've been building FinTech businesses before. We actually met because I was linked by an old relationship out of London and UK who said we are setting up something that we do in Europe and India as well called Startup Bootcamp, and we're doing a FinTech cohort. Would you be a mentor? And there I ended up meeting this gentleman who was running as a CEO and CTO this entire cohort of FinTech startups and innovation. And this is way back in 2015, 2016. We started GetVantage in 2019. So being able to literally leave you with just these three basic things that can subvent years of experience, knowledge, or any degree is curiosity for innovation, really own and be passionate about the problem you're going to solve, because it's going to be many reasons why you don't have to do it or you shouldn't do it. And third, just network. Wherever you are able to see a gap or you're missing some skill, network and quickly pick it up.
Last section. इतने बड़े सेंटेंस में सिर्फ एक वर्ड में जवाब देना है. 5 questions, 1 word या 1 sentence. ठीक है? Tell me your most favorite book if you have to recommend it to some young child.
The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Story of a young boy.
The shepherd
Which
found a treasure at the.
we just went with the flow and life happened.
आपने स्कूबा डाइविंग कर रखी है? Tell me your favorite travel destination and the adventure sport.
So Maldives by far is my favorite spot to go scuba diving. While I have dived in Europe, in Greece, in Bali, the next spot, however, is a small island called Raja Ampat in Indonesia. And for me, actually, now the spot doesn't matter. It's the island life and me and the water that matters.
Interesting. You know, they say कि you are sum of 5 people that you surround yourself with. If you were 22 and you were consciously design the 5 people that you wanted to surround yourself with, who those 5 people would be in your life?
You want the answer when I was 22 or where I am now?
Both.
because it will change drastically.
दोनों बताओ एक बार.
बहुत drastically change होगा. No, look, without taking any specific names, I think at 22, I would have got my 5 list would have been the famous 5 achievers, the Steve Jobs of the world, the crazy entrepreneurs who've done it all, achieved it all. That list would be very drastically different. I would find and have the names on this list of people who are far more balanced than just achievers, because a lot of the ones that we've seen or we popularize or call very successful. And if you see a lot of these biographies, and that's one thing I love to read and learn, is in trying to overachieve any one, they definitely had to make some very large sacrifices on the other side, whether it's family, whether it's health, whether it's children. That's not something that I would recommend. For surrounding myself with people who are far more balanced, a little pressure is good, but with good balance, just not pursuit of any one crazy rat race. So that's how the list in terms of people and personalities would different.
Last सवाल है, and I want you to take your time answering this. If you have to predict future, how our lives will shape, let's say 5 years down the lane, 10 years down the lane, how do you think?
I don't know. I don't have a prediction that's so easy, but I'll tell you, there is a part of me that is extremely scared of the future as well. And that part of me is the father in me. The father of a 6-year-old is extremely scared of what the future or what we are going to leave behind in terms of the fast-paced life, the shorter attention spans, the instant gratification, the intervention on technology in every aspect of our life. I think that's one part of the father or the human in me that is a little scared of what future that lies in front of us. But then there's a second part, which is this ultimate belief that humans have a way to recalibrate and reset itself. And I am a big passionate believer that no matter how much technology will evolve, and yes, there is going to be artificial intelligence. Predictive AI has always been with us. We use it in our business. Now there is Gen AI. There'll be so many evolutions of that. But human beings will still find their way to keep connecting back to nature, keep being creative, and keep rebelling towards anything that disbalances this equilibrium of the future. So no, I am contrary to other thing. I am not really scared that AI will make us lazy or AI will, we have to be scared of what the future is. Yes, we have no clue how we are going to regulate all this new technology that's going to come in front of us. How do we create guardrails around it? But I think we are human beings are ingenuine and we'll find our way. That's it. We'll find our way.
Thanks a ton for this. Really, really grateful.